Eleanor Jameson sat on the edge of her bed, the soft blue light from her phone glowing in the dark. The message stared back at her like a wound she couldn't touch. "It's over between us. Don't contact us again." Her mother's name sat above the text, small and familiar, but the words felt like they came from a stranger. Her throat tightened. For a long minute, she couldn't breathe. She read the message again, waiting for it to change, to reveal some hint of a joke or misunderstanding. But there was nothing. Just the cold finality of those words. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down on the nightstand. The ticking clock on the wall suddenly felt too loud. Her mother had always been the one to tell her that family was forever, that no argument, no mistake, could ever break their bond. Now, all it took was one message to destroy years of love. The silence in her apartment pressed in around her. She could almost hear her mother's voice from years ago, gentle and warm. "You'll never be alone, Ellie. Not as long as you have us." That voice used to mean safety. Now, it echoed like a cruel memory. Eleanor pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold back tears. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the words themselves or the fact that her mother had sent them so easily. No call. No explanation. Just an ending. 2 weeks earlier, everything had still seemed normal. They'd had dinner together at the old family house, the one with the creaky porch and the smell of her father's pipe smoke still hanging in the air. Her brother, Caleb, had been there too, grinning as always, talking about his new business plans. Their parents had listened to him like he hung the moon. She remembered feeling invisible at that table, but she'd ignored it. That was nothing new. The next morning, she'd gone to drop off some papers for her mother and accidentally seen the envelope on the kitchen counter, a copy of their will. Curiosity had made her glance at it, but what she saw stopped her cold. Her name wasn't there anymore. Everything, house, savings, heirlooms, was written under Caleb's. Even the ring her grandmother promised her. She hadn't said anything then. Not to her mother, not to Caleb. She'd gone home, shaken but silent, telling herself there must be a reason. Maybe it was temporary. Maybe it was just paperwork. But deep down, she knew something had shifted in a way she couldn't fix. Now, staring at the phone in the dark, she realized the truth had been there all along. Her family had already started to cut her out. Tonight's message wasn't sudden. It was the final step in something that had been building quietly for months. Eleanor picked up the phone again, her thumb hovering over the screen. She wanted to reply, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. All she managed was a single tear that landed on the glass before she locked the screen and set it face down. Whatever had broken between her and her parents, it wasn't small. And somehow, she knew Caleb was at the center of it. Caleb had always been the one everyone noticed. From the time they were kids, he could charm anyone with a smile or a story. Teachers loved him, neighbors adored him, and their parents never stopped talking about how proud they were. He was the golden son, the one who could do no wrong. Eleanor had learned early that her role was different. She was the quiet one, the one who stayed home when Caleb went out, the one who helped their mother with chores while he got praised for mowing the lawn once a month. When their father had a heart attack, Eleanor didn't think twice. She left her college classes and picked up 2 part-time jobs. She worked long hours, sometimes skipping meals just to make sure the bills were paid. She never complained. All she wanted was to help. For a while, it felt like they were all on the same side. Her mother would hug her tightly after work and tell her, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Ellie." Her father would pat her shoulder, tired but grateful. Those small moments kept her going. She thought they saw her sacrifice. She thought it mattered. Then her father got better. It was slow at first, more energy, fewer doctor visits. But soon he was back on his feet, smiling again. Eleanor was relieved. She thought things might finally go back to normal. But that was when everything changed. Caleb came back into their lives like a gust of wind. He'd been living a few towns over, working on some business idea that never quite took off. The moment their dad recovered, Caleb was there every weekend, bringing gifts, making jokes, taking their parents out to dinner. Their mother would beam at him the way she used to when they were kids. "He's really turning his life around," she'd say. Eleanor would nod, pretending to agree. The more Caleb showed up, the less they seemed to see her. If she stopped by after work, they'd already eaten. When she called, her mother would sound distracted, saying she couldn't talk long. Even when she did visit, the conversations felt stiff, like she was a guest instead of a daughter. Her father would talk about Caleb's plans, Caleb's success, Caleb's ideas. When she tried to share something about her own life, they'd smile politely and change the subject. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Families change. People grow apart. But there was something deeper in their tone, something like distance. She couldn't explain it, only feel it. The house that once felt like home now felt heavy, filled with words left unsaid. Eleanor tried to hold on. She told herself that love didn't vanish overnight, that they were just caught up in Caleb's life. But each visit made her feel smaller, like a shadow standing in the corner of her own family. By the time she discovered the will, she wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not surprised. Somewhere deep inside, she had known for a long time that she was fading from their world, while Caleb had taken her
Dinner
place
at her
completely.
parents'
House used to feel warm and familiar, but that night it felt different. Eleanor sat at the table across from Caleb, who was in one of his loud, cheerful moods. He talked endlessly about his new job and the house he was planning to move into soon. Their parents listened with proud smiles, nodding at every word. Eleanor stayed quiet, eating slowly, trying not to feel out of place. She had almost managed to tune him out when she heard him laugh and say, "Well, at least I won't have to worry about a mortgage ever." The words hung in the air. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. Their father chuckled like it was nothing, but something about Caleb's tone made her stomach twist. "What do you mean by that?" she asked carefully. Caleb looked at her, still smiling. "Oh, didn't they tell you? Guess I shouldn't have said anything." Her mother gave him a warning look, but the damage was done. Eleanor set her fork down. "Tell me what?" she asked, her voice shaking just a little. Her father cleared his throat and reached for his glass. "It's nothing to get upset about, Ellie. We just made some changes to the will. To make things simpler, that's all." "Changes," she repeated. "What kind of changes?" Her mother sighed, not meeting her eyes. "You're doing fine on your own, honey. You've always been independent. Caleb's had a harder time getting settled. We just thought he could use the extra help." Eleanor stared at her parents, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. Independent. The word stung. It was what people said when they wanted to excuse leaving someone behind. "So," she said slowly, "you're giving everything to him." Her father shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that. We just want to make sure both of you are taken care of in your own ways." She almost laughed. "How is taking care of me by giving him everything?" Neither of them answered. Her mother just looked down at her plate. Caleb sat back in his chair, smirking, enjoying every second. Eleanor felt heat rise in her chest, the kind that comes before tears. "I worked for you. I helped when things were falling apart. I never asked for anything." Her father looked away. "We appreciate that, Ellie. But it's done. Please, let's not make this into a fight." It was too much. She pushed her chair back, the sound of it scraping against the floor cutting through the silence. Her vision blurred as she stood up. "You already made it one," she said softly. She turned to leave. Her mother called her name once, but Eleanor didn't look back. She grabbed her coat and walked toward the door, heart pounding. Just as she reached for the handle, Caleb's voice followed her, low enough for only her to hear. "Guess you should have been nicer." She froze for a moment, feeling the words burn into her, then walked out without turning around. The cool night air hit her face, but it didn't calm her. Inside, something broke that couldn't be fixed. After that dinner, Eleanor stopped calling. She didn't visit, didn't text, didn't even drive by the old house. Every time she thought about her parents, her chest tightened. She had tried for years to hold the family together, but she couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. Going silent was the only way she knew how to protect herself. The first few days were hard. She'd wake up reaching for her phone, half expecting a message from her mother asking if she was okay. But there was nothing. No call, no apology, no explanation. Just silence. Weeks passed, and she started to accept that maybe this was how things would stay. She focused on small things. Work, laundry, cooking simple meals. She told herself that this was the beginning of something new, that she didn't need anyone's approval to live her life. But every night, when the apartment went quiet, she missed them. Not the people they had become, but the family they used to be. The ones who laughed around the kitchen table, who celebrated her birthdays with cake and candles. She missed believing she mattered. Then, one Thursday night, her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, thinking it was a work message, but when she glanced at the screen, her heart stopped. It was from her mother. The same contact photo she hadn't seen in weeks, her mom smiling in the garden, sunlight in her hair. For a second, hope flared. Maybe this was the message she'd been waiting for. She opened it and froze. It's over between us. Don't contact us again. She stared at the words, blinking, trying to make sense of them. Her hands began to shake. She hadn't reached out. She hadn't said a single thing since the night she left. Why would her mother send this? Eleanor read it again, out loud this time, as if hearing it might make it sound different. It didn't. It sounded cruel and final, like a door slamming shut. She sat down on the edge of her couch, her throat tight, her heart pounding. It didn't make sense. Her mother wasn't like this. Even when they disagreed, she'd always been gentle, careful with her words. This text felt cold, like it came from someone else. Eleanor typed out a reply but deleted it before sending. She couldn't find the right words. If she asked why, would she even get an answer? The more she thought about it, the stranger it felt. The message came out of nowhere, without reason or emotion. Something wasn't right. It didn't sound like her mother at all. She spent the next few days trying to let it go, but she couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the message again. The finality of it ate at her. Finally, one morning, she decided she couldn't just sit in the dark and wonder anymore. Something had happened, something she didn't understand. And if her mother wasn't going to tell her the truth, she would find it herself. Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about that message. No matter how much she tried to convince herself to move on, the words kept replaying in her mind. She needed answers. She needed to understand what had made her mother cut her off so suddenly. One afternoon, she sat in her car outside a small brick house at the edge of town. It belonged to her Aunt Marla, her mother's older sister. They hadn't spoken in years, not since some family argument Eleanor barely remembered. Still, she was the only person who might know what was happening. After a few minutes of hesitation, Eleanor got out and knocked on the door. Marla opened it slowly. Her eyes widened with surprise before softening. "Eleanor? It's been a long time." "Hi, Aunt Marla," Eleanor said quietly. "Can I come in? I really need to talk to you." Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. Marla poured tea without asking questions, like she already sensed something was wrong. When they sat down, Eleanor took a deep breath. "I know you and Mom haven't talked in a while," she began. "But something's happened. She sent me a message telling me not to contact them again. I don't understand why." Marla's expression darkened. "I was afraid of that," she murmured. Eleanor frowned. "Afraid of what?" Her aunt hesitated, stirring her tea slowly. "Your brother's been in touch with them. A lot, actually. He's been saying terrible things about you." Eleanor felt her stomach drop. "What kind of things?" Marla looked at her with pity. "That you stole money from your parents. That you've been talking behind their backs, saying they mistreated you. He even told them you were planning to hire a lawyer to fight over the inheritance." Eleanor's hands went cold. "That's not true. I never." "I know, sweetheart," Marla interrupted gently. "But your parents believe him. He's been twisting everything to make himself look like the victim. He told them you only helped when your dad was sick because you wanted a bigger share later. He's poisoned them against you." Eleanor sat back, stunned. The air in the room felt heavy. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Marla sighed. "Because Caleb's always needed to be the favorite. And your parents, well, they've always seen what they wanted to see. He's charming. You're quiet. It's easy for them to believe his side." Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. "So that's why they changed the will. That's why she sent that message." Marla nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I wish I could say otherwise." For a long time, Eleanor said nothing. She stared at the table, feeling something inside her crack. Her brother hadn't just taken her place in their lives. He had rewritten her story, turned her into someone she wasn't. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about being erased. About losing her parents' love because of someone else's lies. When she finally stood to leave, Marla reached out and squeezed her hand. "You didn't deserve any of this. Don't let him break you." Eleanor nodded, her voice quiet but steady. "He already did," she said. "Now I just have to decide what to do about it." Eleanor didn't go to her parents' house after visiting Aunt Marla. She didn't call, didn't text, and didn't confront Caleb. Anger burned inside her, but she knew shouting wouldn't fix anything. Her parents had already chosen who to believe. Words wouldn't change that. What she needed now was proof. The first step was quiet. She went through the few old papers she still had from when she helped her parents pay bills years ago. Among them, She found copies of some old bank statements her mother had once asked her to organize. She noticed something she hadn't seen before: small transfers made every few months from her parents' retirement account into another account under Caleb's name. Each transfer was marked as a temporary loan. Her mother had always said they didn't have much savings left, but the numbers told a different story. Caleb had been taking money for years. He hadn't borrowed it, he'd drained it. Eleanor's hands trembled as she looked through each page. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. Her parents had believed they were helping their son, but he had used them. The next day, she reached out to someone she hadn't spoken to in a long time: her father's old accountant friend, Mr. Larkin. He had helped her family when her dad was recovering years ago. She called his office, introduced herself, and explained that she had questions about some old financial records. He agreed to meet her at a small diner near downtown. When she arrived, he recognized her instantly. "Eleanor Jameson," he said with a kind smile. "Haven't seen you in a long time. How are your parents?" She hesitated. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," she said quietly. Over coffee, she showed him copies of the statements. His expression grew serious as he looked through them. "These transfers," he said, tapping the papers, "they weren't authorized by your father's financial plan. Caleb handled those personally. He convinced your parents to move funds directly instead of through the usual process." Eleanor frowned. So they didn't know what they were really signing. Mr. Larkin shook his head. "Not entirely. Caleb told them it was just an early inheritance, a way to simplify things. Your father trusted him." He sighed. "He also had them transfer the house title early, said it would save taxes later. That's why it's in Caleb's name now." Eleanor stared at the table, feeling her throat tighten. "So he planned all of this?" "It looks that way," Mr. Larkin said softly. "I wish I could say it's a mistake, but it's not." She thanked him, gathered the papers, and drove home in silence. The city lights blurred outside her window, but her mind was clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth. She didn't want to hurt anyone. She didn't want revenge in the loud, angry sense. But she wanted the truth to stand where lies had buried her. That night, she spread the papers across her kitchen table, neatly stacking every piece of proof. Caleb thought he had erased her. He had no idea she was still here, waiting quietly. She didn't need to shout to destroy him. She just needed the right moment. The summer air was warm and heavy with the smell of grilled food when Eleanor pulled up to her parents' house. She hadn't been there in months, but the place looked the same: freshly cut lawn, the porch light glowing even in daylight, a few balloons tied to the mailbox. It was their anniversary, and she had heard through a neighbor that they were hosting a family barbecue. Caleb would be there, of course. He always was. Eleanor sat in her car for a long time, her hands gripping the steering wheel. On the passenger seat lay a plain white envelope, thick with papers. Her heart thudded in her chest as she picked it up. She hadn't been invited, but that didn't matter anymore. She was done staying quiet. When she walked into the backyard, all conversation stopped for a second. Caleb was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, his smile freezing when he saw her. Her parents were seated under the old oak tree, surrounded by friends and relatives. Her mother blinked in surprise. "Eleanor, we didn't know you were coming." "I know," she said softly. "I just needed to stop by." Caleb stepped forward, his voice low and sharp. "This isn't a good time. You should go." Her father frowned. "Caleb, let her stay. It's been too long." Eleanor met her father's eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't look away. "Thank you, Dad. I won't stay long." They all sat down at the long picnic table. The air was thick with tension. Caleb tried to keep talking, making jokes, but his voice sounded strained. Eleanor barely touched her plate. When everyone began to relax again, she reached into her bag and placed the envelope on the table. "What's that?" her mother asked. "Something you both need to see," Eleanor said quietly. She slid the papers toward her father. "It's about Caleb." Caleb's smile vanished. "Don't start this again, Ellie." But she didn't raise her voice. She just folded her hands and waited while her father opened the envelope. Inside were copies of the bank statements, the fake loan agreements, and the house title transfer papers with Caleb's forged notations. The sound of laughter from the neighbors drifted over the fence, faint and distant. At the table, there was only silence. Her father's face went pale as he flipped through each page. Her mother reached for one of the documents, reading slowly. When she looked up, her voice trembled. "Tell me this isn't true, Caleb." Caleb swallowed hard. She's lying, he muttered, but his voice lacked the usual confidence. Eleanor didn't move. She kept her gaze steady, her tone calm. Everything in there came from your own records. I didn't make any of it up. Her father pushed the papers toward Caleb. Explain this. Caleb's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth but no words came out. His hands shook slightly as he stood, muttering something about needing air, and walked toward the house. No one spoke for a long time. Eleanor could hear the faint buzz of cicadas and the clinking of dishes as a neighbor laughed in the distance. Her mother sat frozen, the papers still in her hands. Eleanor stood slowly. I just thought you should know the truth, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked back toward her car, leaving the silence behind her. Eleanor hadn't even made it to her car when she heard her father's voice calling her name. She turned to see him standing in the yard, the papers still in his hand. Behind him, her mother sat frozen at the table, staring down at the documents like they were written in another language. Caleb stood near the porch, pacing with his hands in his hair. His calm mask was gone. You couldn't leave it alone, could you? Caleb snapped, his voice sharp and loud. You just had to ruin everything. Eleanor stayed still. I didn't ruin anything, Caleb. You did. He pointed a finger at her, shaking with anger. You always act like you're the victim, like everyone's out to get you. You couldn't stand that Mom and Dad finally trusted me with something. Trusted you, her father interrupted, his voice suddenly firm. You lied to us, Caleb. You said these transfers were approved. You told us Eleanor wanted to sue us. Caleb turned to him quickly. I only said that because she was angry. You know how she gets. I was just trying to protect you from more stress. Her mother's voice cracked as she spoke, her eyes wet. Protect us by stealing from us? Caleb, these papers show thousands of dollars missing. Tell me they are not real. Caleb's face reddened. You don't understand how it worked. It wasn't stealing, it was just moving things around. I was going to pay it back. Her father slammed the papers down on the table. Stop lying. You had us sign the house over to you. You tricked your own parents. The air around them grew heavy. Caleb's chest heaved as he looked from his father to Eleanor. This is your fault, he hissed. You were never happy unless you were the center of attention. You couldn't stand that they loved me more. Eleanor's heart pounded, but she didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. He was unraveling, showing everyone exactly who he was. Her mother started crying quietly, her shoulders shaking. How could you do this, Caleb? She whispered. We believed everything you said about her. We pushed our own daughter away because of you. Caleb looked around helplessly, his anger fading into panic. You're turning on me now? After everything I've done for this family. What you've done, her father said coldly, is destroy it. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of the wind moving through the trees filled the space between them. Caleb's face hardened. Fine, he said, his voice low. You want to believe her? Go ahead. I'm done with all of you. He grabbed his jacket from the porch railing and stormed off toward his car, slamming the door so hard that the windows rattled. The tires screeched as he sped away down the road. Eleanor watched in silence. Her mother's sobs broke the stillness, and her father stood beside her, looking years older. When he finally turned to Eleanor, his eyes were full of guilt. I'm sorry, he said softly. We should have seen it sooner. Eleanor nodded but didn't answer. There were no words left. The truth was finally out, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. The damage was already done, and no amount of truth could bring back what they'd lost. A few days passed after the barbecue. The silence that followed felt different this time. No shouting, no accusations, just quiet. Eleanor tried to keep her mind on work, but every time her phone buzzed, her stomach tightened. She didn't know if she wanted to hear from her parents or not. On the fourth night, the message came. It was from her mother. The same contact photo she hadn't changed, still smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. She hesitated before opening it, half expecting more hurt. But the words that appeared on the screen made her eyes sting. You were right. I'm so sorry. I just wish we'd seen it sooner. Eleanor read it again and again, the letters blurring as tears filled her eyes. It was the apology she had wanted for so long, but now that it was here, it didn't bring relief. It just made her feel tired. The kind of tired that sits deep in your chest and doesn't go away. She set the phone down on the kitchen counter and stared at it. For a moment, she thought about replying. She even typed a few words, "It's okay, Mom," but deleted them before pressing send. Nothing felt right to say. There were no words that could fix what had already been broken. The next morning, she got a call from Aunt Marla. Her voice was quiet. "Ellie, have you heard? Caleb's in trouble." Eleanor froze. "What do you mean?" "He tried to sell the house," Marla said softly. "Your parents found out from the realtor. Apparently, he used forged documents again. They've reported it. There's talk of charges for fraud." Eleanor sank into a chair, staring at the wall. Part of her wasn't surprised. Caleb's greed had no limits, but hearing it confirmed still hit hard. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Marla continued. "Your parents are heartbroken. They're finally seeing who he really is." After the call, Eleanor sat in silence. She didn't feel satisfaction or revenge, just a dull ache. Her parents had finally learned the truth, but at what cost? The family they once were no longer existed. The trust, the warmth, the love, it was all gone. A day later, her mother called. Eleanor didn't answer, but her mother left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky and full of tears. "Ellie, please, I'm so sorry for everything. I don't know how we could have believed him. Please, call me back. I just want to talk. I just want my daughter back." Eleanor listened to the message 3 times before deleting it. She loved her mother, but she couldn't go back, not yet. Too much had been said, too much lost. That night, she sat by her window, watching the streetlights flicker outside. Her phone lay face down beside her. The truth was out. Caleb was finally facing what he'd done, and her parents knew the lies. But instead of feeling victory, she felt emptiness. Forgiveness might come one day, but not now. Right now, she just wanted peace. The leaves had already started to turn when Eleanor moved into the small cabin by the lake. It wasn't big, but it was hers. The first morning there, she woke up to the sound of water brushing against the shore and birds calling through the trees. For the first time in years, there was no noise from anyone else, no tension, no guilt, no voices from the past. Just quiet. She'd bought the place with her own savings, money she'd worked for every long hour and late night. There was a deep comfort in that. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, every item on the shelf belonged to her and her alone. It was a kind of freedom she hadn't known she needed. The days slipped by slowly. She spent mornings drinking coffee on the porch and evenings watching the lake reflect the sunset. Sometimes, when the wind moved across the water just right, she thought she could hear her mother's voice calling her name. But when she turned, there was only the sound of the trees. Letters started arriving after a few weeks. The first one was from her mother, the handwriting shaky but familiar. She didn't open it. She placed it in a small wooden box by the door. Then another came, and another. Each one went into the box, unopened. She couldn't bring herself to read them. She wasn't ready to feel that pain again. She told herself she wasn't being cruel. She just needed distance. For once, she was living her life on her own terms, without the weight of their expectations, their disappointments, or their lies. As winter came, the lake froze, and everything turned still. The quiet didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like peace. She spent her evenings by the fire, reading, writing, sometimes just listening to the crackle of the flames. She realized she didn't need revenge. Caleb had destroyed himself, and her parents were living with the truth. That was enough. Her silence was its own kind of justice. One morning in early spring, she found her mother's car parked by the edge of the drive. She didn't go outside. She watched from the window as her mother stepped out slowly, looking around as if she wasn't sure she should be there. After a few minutes, her mother placed a folded note on the porch rail and walked back to the car. She never looked up at the window. When the sound of the engine faded, Eleanor went outside. The note was short, written in her mother's uneven hand. "We lost our daughter long before we lost our son." Eleanor stood there for a long time, staring at the words. Then she walked to the fire pit by the lake, struck a match, and held the paper until the flames caught. The wind carried the ashes across the water. She whispered softly, "It's over between us." This time, she meant it.